Call to order the April 11th Communications Committee meeting. Roll call, please. Here.
Yes, here.
Item B is the approval of the agenda. Has everyone had a chance to look at it? We'll approve by acclamation on that. Item C is citizen comments. I'm not sure if anybody's on. I know. Item D is report of the committee chair and members. I thank you for making an adjustment to have this meeting today. For those that are potentially watching this, we had some time-sensitive information that we needed to take up as a committee, so we shifted our meeting that was normally scheduled for next Tuesday to this Tuesday, so we're able to do so and be able to make any recommendations to any other committees or board level in time if that's what we desire. So I appreciate everyone's flexibility, especially staff for shifting, making a pivot and shifting, but that's all I have.
No report.
Alderman Plefka, okay.
Yeah, no report either.
Great. Consent agenda, we do not have any minutes on there, so we're going to move on to item F, which is old business, which is continued discussion of the issuance of a request for proposal on signage and branding guidelines. Bola, do you want to take?
Thank you.
Yep.
Alderman Gould. In your packet are samples of proposals that different cities sent out, and they have shared those with us. Wentzville, Grand Valley, Ferguson, and they have also shared the estimated cost of doing so with us as well. So we are just waiting for discussion, direction from the committee.
Okay. And the money that we had set in the budget for this year for communications committee use that we were originally going to put toward a survey, what was that in the budget? Okay.
It's like 20,000.
Okay. You know, so there's, because we are not going to need to spend that on the survey, presumably, there may be some funds to put forth for this type of initiative if we want to take up any more discussion on all that. You guys had a chance to look at any of these and any comments? Alderman Plefka?
Yeah, the City of Grand Valley proposal, I like the way it was set up. I like the way that it covered all of the things that we wanted to cover. It gets specific on page 4, and we could certainly tailor or alter the RFP or direct staff to maybe modify to include things like the fact that we have a new park that's coming online, and we have, you know, a need for not only we have an established badge that people have suggested, and I think I like the idea of holding on to it for some purposes, but moving forward with a more unified, a more graphic, simpler, I think, design. Yeah, modernized, that's a good way to put it. That can be used in a variety of contexts and talk about the fact that we have all the different uses we'll have, all the different signages we have in the city, things like that. I also like the timeline was not that long, and I thought that was great. Anyway, I thought this was I don't know who went out and got and found this from. I've never heard of Grand Valley, Missouri before, but I really liked the.
I belong to a listserv.
There you go.
All the cities in the state.
Well, I thought it was great, and I can see why you wanted to use it as an example. I think it's very it's not only informative, it's very transparent as to how we're gonna conduct ourselves. So, I mean, if there's a need, I mean, I'm in favor of going forward with something like this and would rather see dollars spent on something like this at this juncture if we have to make a decision between that the survey as to how citizens consume information in this city and alternatively talk about developing ourselves a brand. Because I think part of it too, you know, we could have in the RFP, we could have pictures of the signage that's out on Manchester Road now, the Brentwood, the Circle, you know, things like that. I mean, you know, there's a lot of different information we could impart into this, and I think get a lot of good feedback. Anyway, that's my take on it.
Yeah, the Green Valley, both the way that the RFP was written as well as what came back was awesome. I'm curious, when we sent this out to RFP, you know, if the number is 20,000, and you know, looking at like Wentzville, for example, that was 32,000. Ferguson, 50,000. Green Valley, 33.5. Can we, you know, can we maybe align on like this committee as well as staff align on the specific scope that we want for this RFP, so that we don't have an agency come back with something that's significantly more than what we would potentially need. On that point, taking it a step further, you know, it would be good though to see, you know, how we can say maybe take $20,000 that we have to spend this year and have a absolutely incredible product for $20,000. However, get whatever the agency's ideas on future iterations. Whereas, you know, this year we spend $20,000 here, and you know, next year the potential for 25, 30, whatever, $40,000, and how we could build off this RFP as opposed to starting fresh, you know.
Yeah, and I think that some of the things that we had discussed in the previous meeting, and I know, Bola, your comment is that you do this, you want to do it right the first time. You don't want to have to necessarily say, okay, well, we'll only spend this much now, and then we'll do a phase 2 at some point. So, I mean, the committee has committed to the budget, the 20,000 or whatever it is that we have, and I've got my budget book here, but I don't want to flip through and waste everybody's time. But we may be able to, if we determine, look, we really, to make this fully comprehensive and really set the city up and all of its departments up with the necessary resources, we need to maybe spend a little bit more. There may be some ways that we can find some room in other places, correct? So we don't have to limit ourselves with, oh, we can only spend.
I mean, it's going to be, I don't know whether when they would roll this out, would they roll it all out at once? They would roll it all out at once, even for a city our size, with
Well,
just one,
I think,
two full-time people dedicated to it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you could look at, well, there's two things. One is having a consultant come up with a solid recommendation for what the guidelines are. Now, implementation of the guidelines is a totally different
It takes a while.
topic, and there may be things like signage and.
Right.
But I do think that, to Alderman Plufka's point, having in the RFP that we're not looking for a complete overhaul, refresh of the brand as it relates to the brand logo. Maybe there's a legacy of what our logo, and in some cases it doesn't need to change, but there's other applications that become a little bit more modernized and
Right.
especially colors and fonts and things like that.
There is a legacy with that.
That's right.
And I think it's because we have a different board that now is open to changing it, because when I first started, I asked if we couldn't take a look at that, and like, I was given the history on it, and I was like, okay, I'll leave that alone. So it's good that, you know, it's evolved and you're willing to explore that further. But I think in terms of the scope of service, maybe I need better direction on what is really reflective in the scope of service that we need to put out for the RFP. I mean, I've heard Alderman Plufka says he likes Green Valley with the exception of page 4, and you talked about 4 or 5 different things that needs to be incorporated into that. Maybe if I can hear from you, Blaine, and Alderman Gould, what else we could, I mean, and the draft can go back and forth until you all approve what's there, then we issue that.
Quick, just one quick question. I went back to our first meeting, the October 25th meeting. On that line, it says there's a $35,000 budget. It looks like $20,000 for the communication survey, and then a miscellaneous planning and development budget. Is the full 35 grand? So it's just the $20,000? Okay.
As far as an outline of what should be included in the RFP, I mean, I do think the Grain Valley is a very good, well-done RFP, and then also the outcome of it is good. You know, the concern that I have, that I've had, is there doesn't seem to be an enormous amount of continuity from the city, especially when you start to look at now the Parks Department and the new marketing person there is using very different fonts and a very different look and feel for the posts. And I'm not suggesting that it's bad, but it just looks very different than the city's communication. And the city's communication often has a lot of black and white photos, and then there's just the green. And I just don't know that.
Wouldn't this achieve that?
Well, when it starts getting into photography guidelines, narrative guidelines, when to use certain, messages, and I think that we could use some assistance in tightening some of that up. And so I do think that, yes, it absolutely could achieve that. And looking at revisiting some of our colors that we're using, the messaging and how, depending on what audience, if it's a social media post, what kind of narrative should we be including? A hierarchy of elements when we communicate to the public. Oftentimes I feel like we just throw a big masthead of the Brentwood logo, and then any important information is really shifted down in a lower priority. And so I would expect that a consultant could come back for brand guidelines and say, here's an example of a hierarchy of communication in order to reach your audience. I mean, I don't know that, and to Alderman Plufka's point, I do think it would be great to say we're open to a secondary mark for the city logo that could be used in communication efforts that feels a little bit more modern and progressive as the city has sort of evolved to be. And then they do have in here like PowerPoint templates and, so I think there's a certain amount of templates and toolkits that could be developed through this process that would help all departments start to have some continuity to where our audiences know it's coming from Brentwood.
I know that we don't have the pricing for this one that was included in the attachments, but the city of Wichita has kind of been the one that I keep going back to. I believe there was also a town in Arizona, maybe Scottsdale, Arizona, in here. Chandler, Arizona. Yeah, I don't think.
Which is like.
Yeah,
the Cadillac version of.
Yeah, I was about to say I don't think that the city's gonna go for that, and nor as a taxpayer do I think we should. However, looking at the city of Wichita's their brand guidelines, I think even something like this that doesn't necessarily go into all of the PowerPoints, It doesn't go quite as in depth. However, what it does do is it says, these are the logos. These are when to use the logos. Here's a logo for the, I don't know what examples, the finance department, housing and community services. They have those logos in there that are specifically designed to fit the
You have
brand.
that up? What page?
So this would be on page 7. And then what I also love is on page 6, logo misuse. It says, do not do these things with the logo. The page before, approved logos. And that page after, do not do this to the logo. I mean, and then also on this point, like having all of this done, documented, it's wherever, whatever service, SharePoint, Google Drive, whatever service the city uses, having this here for all the departments, for everybody, I think even just this would be a massive improvement. Also looking at this, it seems, like the last few pages are a lot of like letterhead poster options, which would be incredible. But I mean, just like page 1 through looks like 10 would be a massive improvement in my opinion.
Yeah, I think a combo of Grain Valley and Wichita, right? I think Grain Valley, what they did well was they started to outline a good narrative and some messaging examples of here's some communication, which I think is just as important as making sure that there's a visual continuity. There's also some verbal language that we can continue to put out. So I think the Wichita one and Grain Valley one are probably good examples of what I could see being beneficial for Brentwood. And then, but with the Wichita one, whereas that gets into, brochure design, I would look at that as city signage and, instead of brochure design. Show us how to apply any colors, fonts, logos, textures, patterns, whatever that gets developed through this process. Show us how to apply it in actual city communication that's most often used. Posters, signage, light post banners, things like that.
I'll also point out that both of those, both the city guidelines, readability
Yes.
in regards to fonts is called out multiple times, which I believe we had a citizen comment at one point about that. Just calling that out, that I love that component of both those.
So what we can do is combine those two RFPs that reflect what I've heard tonight, send it out, and since it's 3, you all can we can go back and forth until we have a good product, and then we bring that to the meeting, you approve it?
We'll go up
Great.
to, do we need to, then we'll need to take that to the board, or can this committee, can I lead spearhead that? Okay, great. So no more direction that you need tonight?
No, you'll be getting something back from me.
Wonderful, perfect. Great, great information, and thanks for the discussion. I'm glad to hear that you had an interest originally. I'd love to hear the legacy of why we shouldn't have changed it. Okay, moving on to item G, new business, Brentwood Park marketing update. So I'll open this up. The reason that this is here tonight is at our last Ways and Means Committee meeting last week, Eric had brought this to the Ways and Means Committee for consideration. I think part of the reason why he was doing that to that committee and not this committee is because of a time-sensitive nature of meeting. If we wanted to take action on anything, we needed to get it in front of the full board for discussion and take action to meet deadlines before media placements need to be done and creative content developed, et cetera. But this is Brentwood Park grand opening marketing. The Parks and Recreation Department did have in the budget local marketing efforts for this specific, because they knew it was coming up. So we did budget for this for the local market. So everything that you see listed here, banners, Brentwood Bulletin, Brentwood website, direct mail, postcards, et cetera. Those are already in progress, so we're not delayed on getting any direction to them on that. They're currently working on all those things. What is before this committee is, and the reason I asked for it to move out of Ways and Means to come to this committee is because I think, this is in the wheelhouse of being part of discussion around city communication. And should we consider a broader regional audience than just the local area for something as big as this grand opening of Brentwood Park? Even though the playground won't be ready, it is still pretty significant culmination of a lot of the work that Brentwood has put forth in flood mitigation and to revitalize that section. The presumption is that there will also be a grand opening unveiling of the new playground, when that destination playground, when that's completed as well, which staff also plans to do some marketing efforts around, and presumably local and potentially regional at that point as well. So tonight, these are some things that I wanted to bring to this committee to have a discussion on whether or not we feel the potential investment, extra investment that's not in the budget, is something that's a worthy spend for this effort. Bola, anything else that I cover?
You did an excellent job. I spoke with Eric just before the meeting, and he just wanted to remind me that the reason why they put this together was just to give the board a menu of options for consideration. They wanted the board to know that they were doing their own due diligence to provide multiple opportunities beyond just what we do for the local marketing, as big or small as it is the desire of the board.
Yeah, and Eric couldn't be here tonight due to a family obligation, so, or else he would have been here saying everything that I just said and what
Right.
Bola said. So, and his intent was that we wouldn't, I know if you add up all of the, low and high numbers, it gives you anywhere from $50,000 to $70,000, which that's not the intent. But the intent is out of the local. Is there, I guess the first question is from this to this committee is there a desire to get a broader regional reach for the grand opening of the park? And if there is, are there any tactics on here that we feel give us the best bang for the buck? So I'll open it up for discussion. Go ahead.
Well, I looked this all over. I don't know that I am, given what the event is, I don't know that I don't know that we need to spend money on radio or television. I think a lot of these things, was hard for me to tell looking at the outline, what are things that would cost and what are things that wouldn't. I don't know if getting on an event list on the Riverfront Times, does that cost anything?
No,
I didn't,
no.
okay. And then, so, I'm in favor of the magazines that you've got listed here, and I don't know that any of them, or the community boards and window posters, I think all of that is
They're
great.
free, yeah.
And then would, the newspaper ad in the Pulse and Webster Kirkwood Times would be minimal.
Yes.
Yeah. I think that's a good idea too. I think all of the social media is a good idea. I certainly think it should be in the Parks and Rec event guide. I just don't know about the more traditional media, or the billboard issue.
So all of those listed so all of the ones that you talked about before, the event lists, the local listings, the newspaper ads, those are already budgeted for.
Okay, and that's what I thought, yeah.
So the to reach a regional audience list, so billboard, magazines, and newspaper, so not the local newspaper, but Riverfront Times, St. Louis Business Journal, St. Louis Magazine, those would be
It costs.
over and above.
Right.
So if we could get, so for instance, with regard to television, if we could get Fox 2, KSTK, or KMOV interested in it as a story,
Yes,
right?
yes.
That they might cover it. I I know people in both Fox 2 and in KMOV and work with them a lot with regard to certain events. And to me, that would be great. I don't know that it's cost effective to necessarily advertise on those stations, but I think if they're interested in wanting to run a story in early June about this park, that has,
And invite people to come to the opening.
right,
We
as a
could
part of
give
the
them
story.
like a preview, a tour. I think that was the thought.
Right, have
So we
Eric
would
on
not
camera, have
run an
somebody
ad.
from Parks Department.
Yes, yes, that was the thought. As a matter of fact, Eric suggests, even though it's on here, that staff does not recommend radio or TV ads. We just really put it on the list. The recommendation is not to do that. And the cost for the billboards, if there's interest in that, I think he said it's about 1,000 for 10 different billboards, depending on which direction. Do you want it to be all over the region or
Interstate billboards are a little more than that.
a little, oh, they're more than that?
Yeah, depending on location, they're
Yeah.
as much as $6,000 or $8,000 a month. And
The ones
you have
that
to rent
we
them for a
have,
month, too. I
yeah,
mean,
the
it's-
ones that we have are not that pricey.
Okay.
We've been told that
I mean,
they're
the one
about
that's
1,000.
in Brentwood is probably 1,000.
Oh, that's not on, yeah,
Well,
we all remember that.
Apparently, I think it's 1,000 going one way.
One
and-
where,
and then
exactly, less the other.
Yeah.
Significantly more going the other way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's not, as a matter of fact, I don't even think that one, it's on the list, but we don't recommend it.
Yeah, no, I understand.
And I would actually argue that's still sort of a local effort because it's right on the edge of our, so if we're looking to get outside of the region to draw people in, then
But I would be in favor of the direct mail postcards. I know there's, everybody's got their opinion about whether those work or they don't. I don't know. I mean, I think.
yeah, and I think those are part of the included
Yeah,
marketing efforts.
and I subscribe to the idea that you have to capture somebody's attention 3 or 4 times to get them to actually, you know what I mean, in different ways. So if you catch them on social media, and then you catch them with a postcard, and then you catch them with a newsletter, that kind of thing. I don't know. That's my take on it. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I mean, my initial thought, even at the Ways and Means Committee, but didn't want to get into the major discussion on it there, is that I would be, I guess the question that I have, and maybe, I don't know if you'll know this, or maybe something Eric would know, but what would be the return on investment reason we would want to have regional draw to the grand opening of the park as it is now? I would assume that just to start bringing people to it, and maybe rentals of the pavilion, the new event pavilion. But certainly, obviously, without the destination playground, it's not.
That's the draw. It's the park.
The
I mean,
park,
it's
the
the
pavilion.
playground. It's gradual, making people aware
Yeah.
that it's coming. It's now online. So if we say it's a regional draw, you come to the park, you come to the playground. So in terms of timing, we don't have to do all of this now. We agree that the bigger bank has to be for the playground.
When the destination playground comes on.
Exactly.
Yeah, so I would say that my recommendation would be to do all of the local as staff is already planning. Have staff work on PR efforts to get additional news attention. So television, Fox 2, KSDK, but not paid media placement. A bit of an earned media out of it. And hold some of these other, for lack of a better term, traditional advertising that will cost money, that will be paid media placements for closer to when the playground comes online. Because that will be the moment, the culmination of why somebody would really come from all over the place to go to the playground. And to rent the pavilion, but.
Do you know which ones of the non-local, non-traditional you would support? For instance, at the bottom of page 2, there's a list of those unique options. Obviously not skywriting. I don't know if anybody's going to movie theaters these days. There's an opportunity, I don't even know what
Yeah, I
phone
mean, I think
games
those are, I think, you know, when you look at the audience you're trying to reach, right? Families, moms with kids, and movie theater ads would be great. And they're generally fairly cost-effective. I would say, you know, maybe a Metro bus wrap is something that could be interesting there. The magazine and newspaper, if they were ads, potentially in like city lifestyle or
I even see those more as
article.
marketing the city.
Yeah,
You know, all the stores that we
Yeah.
have.
Yeah.
When Manchester Road Development Project gets done, there needs to be a more concentrated
Oh, yeah.
effort, like other cities do, to really get the word out about, you know, purchasing, you know, live, play, work, all of that,
That's right.
opportunities in
This will have a
Brentwood.
significant impact on quality of life.
Right, right.
I mean, billboards are
think that's a good point.
effective at that point. You know,
Yes.
billboards would be effective at that
Yes.
point. I think driving people to a grand opening of the park and playground reveal, and then, you know, a message of the city, to live, work, play kind of thing. Absolutely.
I don't think that there's a I don't think there's a bad option to reach a regional audience. There are more cost-effective options, but I mean, I think that they would all be effective to some degree. The interesting piece of this, though, is, I mean, I imagine when the playground marketing is being done, there'll be something to show for it, even if it's a rendering. But at that point, there'll probably be progress pictures and whatnot. So I don't know if radio, per se, would be the most bang for buck there. I mean, like radio and TV are the same price on here, it looks like. If it were to be one of them, TV is probably more effective. That's just my opinion, though.
And just so the committee knows, these are costs for, it kind of dovetails into our previous conversation on the old business, but these are costs mostly for the media buy. The development of the creative, like if we were to do a TV spot, that would come with an additional cost for production of a TV spot, you know. But we can cross that bridge, I believe, when we get there, and perhaps another reason why, hey, let's get some brand guidelines, the foundation of brand guidelines really well established, and a narrative storyline, so that when we do go out for developing creative on these, there's a very comprehensive brief for anybody who's doing it. That
I couldn't agree more.
So I think what I'm hearing is direction from this committee is no additional regional dollars spent on media placement, but to work on getting regional attention through PR efforts. And I would guess that would be direction to communications manager to work with Eric to start getting that. So I don't think you need a motion, do
No,
you?
you just said it.
Okay. Okay. Anything else you need? Okay, great. So moving on, citizen comments. I don't think anybody's signed on, and nobody in the gallery. So seeing no further business, this meeting is adjourned.